Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into a totally gripping investigation today. Based on leaked documents and some heavy technical testing, we're looking at a massive, incredibly stealthy shift in something you probably take completely for granted: PC ownership. We have a ton of fascinating data to get through, so let's just jump right in.
So I want you to think about the hardware sitting on your desk right now. The rig you spent your hard-earned money to build or buy. Do you really own your gaming PC? Now, you probably think the answer is a simple yes, right? I mean, it's sitting right there in your house. But what exactly is it doing when you aren't looking?
Well, prepare yourself for this number: 3,000. Seriously, if you leave a brand new, totally clean Windows 11 machine completely idle for just 24 hours, meaning no users logged in, zero apps open, literally doing nothing, it will send over 3,000 telemetry pings to more than 100 different servers. Okay, let's dive into this. Independent tests run by the PC Security Channel essentially proved that Windows acts like a digital wiretap. While your PC is just sitting there idle, it's instantly reporting system metadata and tracking identifiers entirely in the background. It's pinging third-party ad networks and market research firms you've probably never even heard of. And the kicker? Simply turning down your consumer privacy settings doesn't actually bypass this. No way. The only way to truly make it stop is through enterprise-level policy controls, which, let's be real, everyday consumers just don't have access to. And then there's this new feature. Microsoft markets their Copilot Plus AI as this huge victory for privacy, claiming that everything stays strictly local on your machine. But when independent testers actually looked at what the recall feature does, wow. It takes searchable pictures of your screen every few seconds. It's indexing your private emails, your chats, and even password manager pop-ups or bank logins right there on your local hard drive. Now, Microsoft did add filters that are supposedly meant to skip over sensitive data, but testers found those filters actually miss things they were explicitly built to catch. It basically turns your PC into a constant, unblinking witness to literally everything you do.
Section 1, the performance tax. So not only is your privacy taking a massive hit, but all this background surveillance comes with a very real, incredibly frustrating cost for high-end gaming rigs. Now, what's really interesting here is the stark contrast between what looks good on a spec sheet versus what you actually feel when you're playing. Journalists spent years comparing Windows 11 to Linux builds specifically designed for gaming, like Bazite. On paper, the average frame rates, they look almost identical. But the true metric of smooth gameplay is the 1% lows. Those sudden, jarring freezes right when you snap around in the middle of a gunfight. Using the exact same hardware, Linux consistently delivers 1% lows that are 15 to 20% higher than Windows 11. It's honestly embarrassing Windows where it matters most.
Just think about how incredibly frustrating this is for the average consumer. You spend thousands of dollars building this premium high-end gaming rig. You pay a premium for all that raw processing power only to have it skimmed right off the top by the operating system you're basically forced to install. Forced update checks, massive background telemetry, Copilot AI doing things you quite literally never asked for. Sure, each process might be tiny on its own, but you stack all of them up on a machine that's trying to push 240 frames per second, and boom, it creates a massive, undeniable performance tax.
Section 2, the anti-cheat illusion.
So if Linux performs that well, why haven't we all just switched over? Well, for the longest time, aggressive multiplayer anti-cheat software was the ultimate roadblock. Single-player games have actually worked flawlessly on Linux for a while through a compatibility layer called Proton. But multiplayer, that was a total dead end. But then, a coordinated, totally silent 4-year engineering effort completely dismantled that barrier. First, Epic added Linux support for easy anti-cheat. Then, BattlEye followed suit. Suddenly, out of nowhere, multiplayer giants like Apex Legends and Halo Infinite became totally playable on Linux overnight. That massive technical wall that was forcing weekend gamers to stay trapped on Windows, it literally just evaporated.
Section 3, the silent escape route. And with those barriers down, we hit the major twist of this explainer. Because another massive company actually saw Microsoft's trap coming from miles away. And this brilliantly illustrates Valve's incredible foresight. When you trace their steps, it's obvious they weren't just reacting to Microsoft's recent AI and telemetry announcements. No, they laid a long-term bet when absolutely nobody was looking. SteamOS was first released way back in 2013. Then, the Steam controller launched in 2015 so they could figure out custom hardware inputs. Development for the Proton compatibility layer began in 2018 to make Windows games run seamlessly. And finally, the Steam Deck hit the market in 2022. They patiently planned and essentially built a Trojan horse delivery vehicle over a whole decade. And the result of that decade of planning? 4 million.
By February 2025, the Steam Deck had sold roughly 4 million units. To put that into perspective, that accounted for half of all handheld PCs sold in that window. And they pulled this off with almost zero traditional advertising. I mean, no massive billboards, no celebrity endorsements. It was just pure word of mouth. Secretly, the Steam Deck was acting as this massive on-ramp. Every single person who buys one is interacting with a complete Linux operating system, and they're actively learning that they simply do not need Windows to play their favorite games.
This silent strategy caused an absolute earthquake in the industry. Back in early 2024, the Linux market share on Steam was sitting below 2%. But by March 2026, it surged to over 5% and stabilized just under that mark shortly after. Today, about 6 million users game on Linux. That is a population larger than the entire country of Denmark. And over that exact same window, Windows experienced its biggest sustained drop in the entire history of the Steam hardware survey, plummeting from 96% down to 92%.
Section 4. Project K2 and the Subscription Trap.
So Valve successfully created a shift in default behavior. And that leads us directly into Microsoft's frankly frantic reaction in late 2025 and what it reveals about their true endgame for the PC industry. You see, Project K2 is basically Microsoft admitting that Windows 11 has become unreliable and intrusive enough that a very real chunk of its audience is just leaving. Project K2 was an internal Microsoft initiative where they were frantically trying to fix surface-level complaints, things like a clunky taskbar or a slow file explorer. But while they applied these public-facing band-aids, the underlying reality actually got much worse. Because over that exact same period, mandatory Microsoft accounts became central to setting up new PCs, and background telemetry quietly ramped up even more. Let's break down the two radically different paths these tech giants are taking, because it's fascinating. Microsoft's ecosystem is aggressively shifting towards subscriptions like Game Pass, highly invasive telemetry and AI logging with recall, and rented access through mandatory sign-ins. Microsoft is basically following the exact same highly profitable playbook that Adobe and Autodesk used when they shifted to subscription models. But conversely, Valve's ecosystem is built entirely on traditional hardware ownership, local libraries, offline play, and a sovereign OS. Microsoft's new model fundamentally clashes with the multi-billion-dollar PC gaming ethos, an ethos that honestly has always been built on the assumption of total user control.
Section 5. The Sovereign OS.
To truly understand exactly what Valve is defending and what is actually at stake for you here, we need to look at what they've built. A sovereign OS is an operating system where you truly own your hardware in the realest sense of the word. Your storage stays completely under your control, your data isn't secretly extracted and sent to a server without your permission, and most importantly, tracking you isn't the company's underlying business model. Today, traditional desktop Linux and Valve SteamOS are basically the only major consumer spaces left that actually fit this definition. macOS constantly pushes you toward an Apple ID and iCloud. Chrome OS has always been a window into Google's tracking services. And well, we already know exactly what Windows is doing. When the rest of the industry turned to tracking and subscriptions, Valve walked the complete opposite way. And listen, these aren't just wild hypotheticals we're talking about here. This is happening right now. Cheap Windows keys are already failing due to sudden policy changes. Games you bought and paid for are requiring Microsoft sign-ins just to let you launch them. Subscription models are aggressively replacing local ownership, and constant AI logging is just becoming an unavoidable default. So the crucial point is every single user is going to face this exact choice. You will confront this reality during your very next PC purchase or the next time a mandatory Windows update prompt pops up on your screen.
Valve has spent over 10 years patiently constructing an exit door from this entire subscription trap. It's sitting right there on store shelves, it works flawlessly, and millions of people have already quietly walked through it. The question is no longer whether the traditional Windows model is failing its power users. The real question is, will you still own your PC when it does? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this gives you a whole lot to think about the next time you boot up your rig.